Hey there. I wanted to go over the notes from last night's class with you since a bunch of you weren't here, so I thought it would be worthwhile to take a few minutes. So our goal when we draw features, so last night's lesson was all about features, eyes, noses, mouths, ears. Our goal is to get away from these symbolic versions, the symbolic kind of almond shape with individual lashes. That's what's imprinted in our heads, and that's what we get away from. So when you draw eyes, here's what I want you to think about. When you have a frontal point of view, you want to think about the open segment of the eye, the exposed eyeball, as existing because you have an orb where lids are stretching across and over it. That shape that's exposed on the top, you can think of it in three angles. You have a steep inner angle, then a very flat horizontal top angle, and then another more angular edge on the outside. So 1, 2, 3 angles on the top of the lid. On the bottom of the lid, you have 1, 2 main angles. And notice how this apex and this apex, they're kind of offset at a diagonal. Of course, we also have this little snippet, which is called the tear duct, which is on the outside of that orb-like structure. So that is what I want you to think about when you're looking at the shape of the open part of the eye. But that's of course not everything that belongs to the eye. We also have this place up here where the lid recedes into the eye socket, which creates this little crease here. So the distance of this crease from the rim of the lid to the crease is very different person to person. Some people don't even have it, or they only have like a little segment visible here. So that is something that's very particular and will increase your likeness of the portrait on the portrait tremendously. Once you have this crease, the next part is this part that we often forget as artists, at least as beginner artists, because we're unaware of it, and that is the underside of the brow. So it's the space in between the brow shape and the lid crease, which basically is the underside of the brow bone, and that shape is very particular person to person, and it's much bigger than we want to give it credit for. So this is, again, it's probably because we don't have a name for it that we use on an everyday basis, which is why we kind of in our minds forget about it when we draw. But it's crucial to make your eye look like the person's eye. Lastly, you're going to start looking for at the bottom of your orb for having a little mid-tone area right in here. Often, especially if you have puffy eyes or you didn't sleep well, you have bags under your eyes, it will be really noticeable. So it's basically the bottom of the eye socket structure. So this is when you have a frontal point of view. And of course, things change when you don't have a frontal point of view. So over here is if you see a profile of the eye. So notice how we don't have the stereotypical almond shape anymore. From a profile, this looks more like a piece of pie or a piece of pizza, and the lid is thick and it's stretching around this orb, and that thickness is really what we want to look for. So takeaway here is that if you don't have a frontal point of view, you lose the stereotypical shape and you begin to see a new shape. If you have a 3/4 point of view, the shape looks different again. And so your goal is to identify what are the different angles on the top, what are the different angles on the bottom, and how can you still translate that eyeball is being covered up by a thick lid. Notice also the difference between if you see the eye straight on, your iris is truly circular, If you see the eye from the side, that circle foreshortens into a ellipse.